The Galactic Concordance chamber buzzed with unease, the vast dome lit by the ethereal glow of rotating planetary holograms. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the amphitheater-like assembly, their murmurs growing louder as tensions escalated. At the center of the chamber stood Commander Saren Korath, a towering figure with cobalt blue scales that shimmered under the chamber's light. His elongated head crest and glowing amber eyes gave him an imposing presence, accentuated by the ceremonial armor he wore, a relic of countless conquests. "Have you ever seen a human beg for mercy?" Korath sneered, his deep, resonant voice cutting through the din. He let the silence hang in the air, daring anyone to respond. "No, neither have I. But perhaps that's because they've never had the courage to face a real war." The assembly quieted, all eyes fixed on Korath as his tail lashed against the metallic floor. The Zalarian commander's contempt was palpable, and his words carried the weight of his kind, renowned for their ruthless war tactics. "Humans," he continued, his tone dripping with disdain, "hide behind diplomacy and treaties. They've spent centuries avoiding the bloodshed the rest of us endure. While our fleets clash, their precious alliance of Terran systems remains untouched, fragile, cowardly." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Terran systems had long been a subject of derision, their absence from interstellar conflicts interpreted as weakness. For centuries, the humans had brokered peace while others fought wars, relying on trade and negotiation to safeguard their worlds. It was a strategy that had preserved their borders, but it had also earned them little respect. Sitting in the shadows of the chamber, Ambassador Kalos of the Oralis species, with his iridescent, jellyfish-like form gently pulsing, leaned toward his neighbor. "Perhaps the humans should finally prove their worth," he whispered, his voice a harmonious blend of tones. Their technology could turn the tide against the Skarn Dominion. Korath's sharp hearing caught the remark, and he turned with a predator's grin. "Ambassador Kalos is correct. It's time we force the Terrans to choose a side. Either they fight with us against the Skarn, or we dismantle their empire piece by piece." A sharp intake of breath filled the room. The Skarn Dominion was no mere adversary. A species of bioengineered warlords, their fleet had consumed entire systems, leaving scorched planets in their wake. The Galactic Concordance had been fighting them for decades, their resources stretched thin, their victories fleeting. Korath's amber eyes glowed brighter. "We send them an ultimatum. Fight with us, or be torn apart." Another voice broke the silence. Ambassador Rilin Myron of the Sylvani, a delicate crystalline humanoid with a soft, musical voice, interjected. "And if they refuse? The Terran systems have survived for centuries without yielding to threats." "They won't refuse," Korath snapped, his claws flexing. "Humans are too evolved, too idealistic to face annihilation. They'll surrender before the first shot is fired." The chamber erupted into debate, but the decision was all but sealed. A message would be sent to the Terran systems, demanding their immediate involvement in the war effort. If they refused, their technology and wealth would be seized, their worlds brought to heel. But as the Concordance finalized its plans, they failed to account for a simple truth. Humanity's peace was not born of fear. It was a choice, a calculated strategy that had hidden the true extent of their capabilities for centuries. The ultimatum was transmitted, broadcasted across the galaxy in every known language. When it reached Terra Prime, the heart of the Terran systems, the council chambers there fell silent as they read the thinly veiled threat. 2 days later, the Concordance received their answer. The response was short, almost dismissively so. "We accept. Prepare." The message sent a chill through the Galactic Concordance. Commander Korath read the words aloud, his confidence faltering. "This isn't the response of a frightened species." Ambassador Myron, her crystalline skin refracting the light in nervous patterns, whispered, "No, it's not. It's the response of a species that's been waiting." The chamber quieted once more as the enormity of the situation began to sink in. What had the humans been hiding all this time? What power lay beneath their diplomacy? And most importantly, why were they so calm? Commander Korath turned to his aides. "What do we know of their forces?" The aide, a squat reptilian called Voss, shifted uneasily. Their fleet is vast, but it's primarily been used for exploration and defense. They haven't fought a major war in over 1,000 cycles. We have estimates, but no solid data. Then what about their weapons? Their tactics? Korath demanded, his voice rising with frustration. Voss hesitated. Unknown, sir. The Terrans guard their military secrets closely. No outsider has ever seen their full capabilities. Korath slammed his fist into the console, his tail lashing in agitation. Damn it. We're walking into this blind. The Concordants, so sure of their power mere days ago, now found themselves in an unfamiliar position. Dread. Their ultimatum had been met with a challenge, not submission. Humanity had accepted the call to war, but no one in the chamber knew the depths of what they had unleashed. The countdown to the war's first battle had begun, and the question hung heavy over every mind in the chamber. Who had underestimated whom? The Concordance fleet gathered at the designated rendezvous point, a quiet system on the fringes of Terran-controlled space. Hundreds of warships assembled in tight formation, their hulls gleaming under the dim light of a distant star. From sleek, angular frigates to massive battlecruisers bristling with weaponry, the Armada was a testament to the combined strength of the galactic civilizations. But despite the show of force, a sense of unease lingered among the fleet's commanders. The Terran systems had yet to arrive. Hours ticked by, and the only sign of activity from Terra Prime was the enigmatic message: "We accept. Prepare." On board his flagship, the Sovereign's Vengeance, Commander Korath paced the bridge, his frustration growing with each passing moment. "Where are they?" he growled, his claws clicking against the metal floor. "They agreed to this meeting, yet they make us wait like fools." Ambassador Myron, standing at the edge of the command dais, regarded Korath with her crystalline gaze. "Patience, Commander. The Terrans have always been deliberate in their actions. Perhaps this is a tactic, a way to unsettle us." Korath's amber eyes narrowed. "If that's their aim, it's working." Before anyone could respond, a sharp tone echoed through the bridge. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "It's from the Terran systems." "On screen," Korath ordered, turning toward the massive display. The image that appeared was far from what the commanders had expected. Instead of a grand council of Terran diplomats or military strategists, there was only one man. He stood in stark contrast to the elaborate uniforms of the Concordance officers, dressed in a simple black uniform devoid of insignia. His gray eyes were sharp, his expression calm, yet unreadable. "This is Admiral Kale Varen of the Terran systems," the man began, his voice steady and composed. "Our fleet is en route. Prepare to receive us." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Korath clenched his fists. "A single admiral? That's their response? Where is their delegation, their council?" "Did you see his eyes?" Myron murmured, her crystalline facets flickering in nervous patterns. There was no fear, no hesitation. The communications officer interrupted. "Commander, we're detecting hyperspace signatures. A fleet is emerging from FTL. All hands to stations," Korath barked. "Let's see what these Terrans are bringing to the table." The view screens lit up with a sight that silenced even Korath's sharp tongue. One by one, the Terran ships materialized in the void, their dark, utilitarian designs a stark contrast to the elegant vessels of the Concordance. These ships were not built for appearances, they were built for war. Angular hulls bristled with weaponry, their surfaces sleek and unadorned, save for faint markings that glowed faintly under the starlight. The fleet moved with an eerie precision, their formation flawless as they advanced toward the Concordance Armada. There was no hesitation, no adjustment. Every maneuver seemed preordained, as if the Terran fleet were a single entity. "My gods," one of Korath's officers whispered. "They're massive." Korath ignored the comment, his gaze fixed on the largest vessel at the center of the formation, a colossal dreadnought that dwarfed even the Concordance's flagship. Its hull gleamed with a dull, matte finish, absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. It carried no visible markings, no indication of its allegiance, save for its sheer, terrifying presence. The communication line flared to life again, and Admiral Varen's face returned to the screen. "Commander Korath," he said, his tone polite but firm. "The Terran fleet stands ready to engage the Skarn Dominion alongside your forces. What are your orders?" Korath bristled at the implication that the Terrans were awaiting his command. He forced a smile, masking his irritation. "Admiral Varen, your fleet is impressive. We will intercept the Skarn forces in the Altheron Belt. I trust your ships can keep pace?" Varen's expression didn't change. "The Terran fleet will adapt as needed." The line went dead once more, and Korath exhaled slowly. "Monitor their movements," he ordered his officers. "I want every Terran ship tracked. If they deviate even slightly, I want to know." The fleet began its journey toward the Altheron Belt, the Concordance and Terran ships moving in uneasy unison. The stark contrast between their vessels was not lost on the crews, and whispers spread through the ranks. "What do we really know about their capabilities?" Myron asked quietly, her crystalline skin dimmed in thought. Korath's jaw tightened. "Not enough. Their secrecy is unnerving." Hours later, the fleet arrived at the edge of the Altheron Belt, a region of dense asteroid fields where the Skarn Dominion had been spotted. The Concordance fleet formed a defensive perimeter, their ships scanning for signs of the enemy. Korath stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the tactical display. "Any sign of the Skarn?" "Not yet," replied his tactical officer. "But we're detecting faint energy signatures, likely cloaked ships." Before Korath could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "Admiral Varen, do you have a plan for detecting cloaked ships?" Myron asked over the shared comms channel. Varen's voice returned, as calm and measured as ever. "Yes, the Terran fleet will handle it." Without further explanation, the Terran ships began to reposition themselves, forming a complex, shifting formation that confused even the Concordance's most advanced algorithms. Within moments, energy pulses rippled outward from the Terran vessels, illuminating dozens of hidden Skarn ships. "They've exposed them!" Myron exclaimed. The tension on the bridge shifted into something new, something Korath couldn't quite place. As the Skarn ships broke formation, rushing to attack, the Terran fleet didn't flinch. They advanced, and they didn't miss. The void erupted into chaos as the Skarn Dominion fleet broke their stealth. They swarmed out of the asteroid field like a predator pouncing on unsuspecting prey. Their ships, jagged and organic in design, exuded menace, with glowing red bioluminescent veins pulsating along their hulls. The Concordance fleet braced for the onslaught, their weapons charging to full power. But before Korath could issue the order to engage, the Terran fleet acted. Without hesitation, the Terran dreadnought surged forward, its smaller escort vessels flanking it in perfect synchronization. Bright flashes of energy weapons lit up the darkness as the Terran ships unleashed a torrent of firepower. Streams of plasma and high-yield kinetic projectiles tore through the Skarn ships with pinpoint accuracy. It wasn't just overwhelming. It was surgical. Korath's jaw tightened as he watched the Terran ships in action. Their weaponry wasn't just advanced, it was terrifyingly efficient. Each shot seemed to target weak points in the Skarn's armor, igniting explosions that tore through their vessels like paper. How are they doing that?" Myron murmured, her crystalline facets flickering with unease. Korath didn't respond. He was too focused on the tactical display where the Terran fleet was systematically dismantling the Skarn forces. It wasn't just their firepower that was unsettling. It was their coordination. Every movement, every shot seemed to anticipate the Skarn's actions before they even made them. "Commander, the Terrans are leaving us behind," one of Korath's officers said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They're engaging the Skarn on their own." "Hold our position," Korath ordered, his tone sharp. "Let's see how this plays out." On the battlefield, the Terran dreadnought drew the bulk of the Skarn force's attention. Its massive hull absorbed hit after hit from the Skarn's bioplasmic weaponry, its shields glowing with each impact but holding firm. Meanwhile, the smaller Terran ships darted around the flanks, their coordinated strikes creating chaos among the enemy ranks. Korath's claws tightened on the edge of his console as he watched the spectacle unfold. "This isn't a battle," he muttered. "It's an execution." Myron glanced at him, her crystalline form dimming further. "If they're capable of this against the Skarn, and what does that mean for us?" Before Korath could respond, an alert blared across the bridge. "Skarn reinforcements incoming!" the tactical officer shouted. "Dozens of ships closing fast!" Korath's instincts flared. "All ships, defensive formation! Prepare to stand down!" Varen's voice cut through the comms. It was calm, but there was an edge of command that brooked no argument. "The Terran fleet will handle this." Korath bristled, his pride warring with his curiosity. He opened the channel. "Admiral Varen, this is our battle as much as yours. We're not going to sit back while—" "You won't need to," Varen interrupted. "We have this under control." Korath's protests died in his throat as he turned his attention back to the display. The Terran fleet was already adjusting its formation, the dreadnought repositioning itself at the center. As the Skarn reinforcements entered the fray, the Terrans unleashed a weapon unlike anything Korath had ever seen. A massive energy pulse erupted from the dreadnought, cascading outward in a brilliant wave of light. It wasn't an attack in the traditional sense, it was a disabling field. As the wave struck the incoming Skarn ships, their movements faltered. Engines flickered, weapons went dark, and the ships themselves seemed to drift helplessly. "What is that?" Myron whispered, her voice barely audible. "An EMP field," Vela, the Concordance's science officer, replied, her tone filled with awe. "But it's targeted. It's only affecting the Skarn." The Terran fleet wasted no time capitalizing on the disruption. Their ships moved with precision, tearing through the disabled Skarn vessels one by one. It was merciless, calculated, and utterly effective. Korath's claws dug into his console as he watched the slaughter. "They're not just winning," he said, his voice low. "They're sending a message." The battle was over in minutes. The once formidable Skarn fleet had been reduced to debris, their ships either destroyed or rendered inoperable. The void fell silent once more. The only sounds on the Sovereign's Vengeance bridge, the faint hum of systems and the nervous breathing of the crew. Korath opened the comms channel again. "Admiral Varen," he said, his voice carefully measured. "The battle is won, but I must ask, why didn't you inform us of your capabilities?" Varen's face appeared on the screen, his expression as calm as ever. "Because you didn't need to know," he replied simply. "Our goal was to neutralize the Skarn threat, and we accomplished that." Korath's frustration flared. "You used us as bait." Varen didn't deny it. "Your fleet served its purpose. The Skarn focused on you first, which allowed us to position ourselves for the most effective strike." The bluntness of the admission left the bridge in stunned silence. Korath's claws scraped against the console. "You played us." Varen's expression didn't change. "We did what was necessary to ensure victory. If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should reflect on why." Before Korath could respond, Varen's image disappeared, the transmission cutting off. The debris field stretched out before the Concordance fleet, a grim testament to the Skarn Dominion's annihilation. The silence on the bridge of the Sovereign's Vengeance was oppressive, every officer lost in their own thoughts as they stared at the aftermath. For all their victories against lesser threats, never had they witnessed such a cold, calculated dismantling of an enemy force. Korath broke the silence, his claws drumming against the armrest of his command chair. "Myron, report on the Terran fleet's movements." Myron's crystalline form flickered as she scanned the displays. "Their fleet is regrouping. No pursuit of Skarn survivors, no indication of damage to their ships. It's as if this was routine for them." Korath's claws tightened. Routine. That was the most unsettling part. To the Terrans, the destruction of the Skarn had been nothing more than an operation, a chore to complete and move on from. He turned to his comms officer. "Open a channel to Admiral Varen." The screen flickered and Varen's face appeared. The calm composure hadn't wavered, but there was a sharpness in his eyes now, an intensity that sent a shiver down Korath's spine. "Commander Korath," Varen greeted, his tone neutral. "What can I do for you?" Korath leaned forward, his scales bristling. "You've demonstrated your strength, Admiral, but what you've withheld concerns me even more. You've shown us what you can do, now tell me why you're really here." Varen's gaze didn't falter. We came to eliminate a mutual threat, and we succeeded. That's not what I'm asking, Korath pressed, his voice low and firm. You could have ended this war without involving us. You've shown that your fleet didn't need our help, so why drag us into this? For the first time, Varen's expression shifted. A faint smile played at the corners of his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. To show you the truth, Commander, to lift the veil. Korath frowned, his tail flicking uneasily. What veil? The illusion of strength, Varen replied, his voice like a blade cutting through the tension. For centuries, the Concordance has prided itself on being the arbiter of galactic order, the protector of weaker systems. But against a true threat, one like the Skarn, you're unprepared, vulnerable. If we hadn't intervened, you'd be dead. Myron stiffened beside Korath, her facets flaring with indignation. You manipulated us to make a point? Varen's eyes locked onto hers, unyielding. We didn't manipulate you. We revealed what you refused to see. The Concordance's strength is a facade, built on outdated strategies and fractured alliances. You rely on tradition while the galaxy changes around you. Korath's claws dug into the armrest. And what's your solution? Subjugation? A galaxy ruled by Terran fleets? Varen's smile widened, the steel in his gaze unrelenting. Not ruled, unified. The Terran sovereignty doesn't seek dominance. We seek survival. The Skarn are just one of many threats lurking in the void. There are forces out there far worse than anything you've faced. If the Concordance doesn't adapt, it will crumble. A chill ran through the bridge. Korath's officers exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Varen's words pressing down on them. And what happens if we refuse this unification? Korath asked, his voice a low growl. Varen leaned forward slightly, his presence on the screen towering despite the distance. Refusal is your choice, Commander, but understand this. The galaxy is at a tipping point. Division will lead to extinction. Unity is the only path forward. Whether the Concordance joins willingly or not, the sovereignty will do what is necessary to ensure survival. The screen went dark, cutting off any further conversation. The silence that followed was suffocating. They're not allies, Myron said quietly, her crystalline form dimming. They're conquerors. Korath stood, his posture tense as he stared at the darkened screen. No, he said slowly, his voice heavy with realization. There's something worse. They're saviors who believe they're the only answer. Before anyone could respond, an alert blared across the bridge. The comms officer turned, his voice urgent. Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's encrypted, and it's not from the Terrans. Korath's brow furrowed. Play it. The transmission crackled to life, and a shadowed figure appeared on the screen. Its features were obscured, but the voice was clear and commanding. Commander Korath of the Concordance, we've been monitoring your recent battle. The Terrans are not what they seem. If you want the truth about their intentions, meet us in the Nyx sector. Come alone, and bring no Terrans. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Who was that? Myron asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and caution. Korath's gaze remained fixed on the dark screen, his mind racing. I don't know, he admitted. But if there's even a chance they have answers… Commander? Myron interrupted, her tone sharp. It could be a trap. Korath nodded. It could. But right now we're walking blind. The Terrans have shown us their power, but not their full hand. If someone else has information, anything that can give us an edge, we have to take the risk. Myron hesitated, but eventually nodded. Then we go to the Nyx sector. Korath turned to his crew, his voice steady. Prepare the ship. We leave immediately. As the Sovereign's vengeance changed course, the void seemed darker than before. Korath couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that the shadow of the Terran sovereignty would loom over the galaxy for a long time to come. But somewhere in the Nyx sector, someone was waiting. Someone who might hold the key to unraveling the mystery of the Terrans and their true purpose.